Hello traders, it's August 30th, 2023. We're talking about the ES futures here. I took two setups and I spotted a third that I didn't end up taking, but I wanted to talk about it because there were some very nice entries here and also good confirmations from a macro perspective. So let's dive right in. Today, in the morning, we had some jobs data, we had PCE, and we had GDP. And in summary, all of that data was essentially positive for the market. It showed there was a bit of cooling in the economy, also weakening inflation and a slowing labor market. So all of these things are pointing bullish. That was, from the macro perspective, why I was interested in just taking longs. Another good reason here was the 10-year yield. The previous day had been up in the 4.15% range for the first time since earlier this month. We actually dipped under 4.1% and started to linger around it at the time that the market opened. So, with macro news setting direction, it was time to find some entries. Here's the opening of the day, and I'm going to pause this for a sec. So we had a nice move up off of the open, some bullish activity and aggressive buying, and a retracement with selling right back down into this open level. This was already an area of interest for me because of this buying here, and I wanted to see what price would do, and we entered back into it. So we did get some aggressive buying and consolidation, and then fairly nice structure here. This aggressive buyer kind of set an inflection point, and then we had aggressive buying to come up back through this level and take us back up to an upside rally. I didn't enter yet, but what I was waiting for was to see what price would do when we came back down into this range again. So let me just speed this up just a little bit here. So we had price come down. I was watching for continuation of bullish activity right in this range from about 45.10 to 45.09, and not wanting to see price get below this unless we had a quick duck under, perhaps a stop run and a V-shaped recovery to get us right back up into this area here. Okay, so price did retest, and we did start to find buyers off of this level. As soon as this additional bounce came in, we started to stabilize, and then what we'll see is a larger transaction, aggressive buy transaction that will come in here in a moment. That was kind of my final confirmation to really scale in. You see this nice move up here, and continue to hold this position to the upside. So I did like this setup. I like this consolidation, this aggressive buyer, how we moved away from that area. It was nice that it did manage to pull back and give a nice low risk retest here. And again, this is all backed by the macro data pointing very bullish. So we did end up testing high of day, got a nice break above, and then my criteria was essentially just to continue to hold these higher lows as we made progress up into the 24 area. After this big squeeze on high volume, I did exit the position right there, and I do believe we ran up a little bit higher than that. All right, fast forwarding a bit to the second setup. We're about 45 minutes, almost an hour later. So here's the first setup here. We did end up rallying all the way up to 30. And then we saw just this straight down sell-off, like super aggressive, very motivated by these sellers here. And we pushed through the low. keep in mind all of those bullish factors I mentioned before. I was still bullish and happy to see this sort of price action because I was suspecting there was going to be a very violent reversal once we reached, that turnaround point. The challenge was just trying to spot it. Now this was a setup. It was one of those just amazing kind of quick turnarounds that occurred, and it did not yield what I felt was valid retracement into an area with good risk to reward, but I still wanted to point it out because of the order flow that this opportunity had, because it was pretty unique. So as we started to breach the lows, we got these very sudden tape bombs, very high volume, and lots of aggressive orders coming in, lots of stops being hit, and it just continued to accelerate more and more intense. And then we hit this final one. So I'm going to play this, and I want you to watch the price action here that's going to occur in the next couple of seconds. So I'm going to rewind it because it happened really quickly. So we're bombing down, consolidating. And here we go again. So this is another little bomb down. We start to see some book flip as soon as we get below it, and then we see aggressive buyers start to absorb this. So that was something that was interesting that happened a couple of times, and then here we go on this one. It was so violent and fast it almost like lagged the data feed. So there it is. It hits really hard. We get an even bigger absorption, and then immediately multiple absorptions here, and we're immediately bought back up to the origination point of the tape bomb. So that was what was really different about it. If you look at some of these other ones, we never even got out of the consolidation, but this one we immediately lifted right back up. And then another really key thing here was that we had capitulation volume. So these last two were very high volume. They were significantly higher than what we saw in the open, like substantial amounts of volume here. And if we get this kind of consolidated, after we consolidated and found even more volume in this particular time zone, this ended up being the highest volume kind of area of the entire day. So that was a big giveaway. Was we had the bullish indicators, we got this really oversold sell-off. It culminated in capitulation volume, and then hyper aggressive buying back up through the origination point. I had actually put a little bit of a bubble saying if we ever returned after we got back up here, if we returned back to this, anywhere in this region, that was going to be my area of interest. So I'll speed this up a little bit here. I would have definitely scaled in had we touched down in that area. Unfortunately, the best opportunity we had was right here. There was another bit of a bomb, but it was never able to push back down into this range where we saw kind of this move originate or this move originate. So didn't get to scale into that one, but it proved to be quite a nice retracement. So I wanted to illuminate, just talk one more point about this setup, the capitulation volume setup here at the bottom of the day. If we break this down, what happened in just these few seconds here is pretty amazing. If we look at this delta, so we have this buy delta, 2,000 lot buy delta, which is immense to the buy side. And so much of this activity, a lot of it is usually mixed. But you can see how much of this activity out of the 2,000 and then about 4,400 total lots here, nearly half of the lots at 45 or 450225, nearly half of them about split between the buy and sell delta. But up here for 450250, 2,000, almost all the lots traded up here were buy lots, and so that is yet another confirmation to just go for a quick scale in the future if I see that kind of a signal. Fast forwarding in time to the third setup now. So here's the beginning of the day. We had the rally, we had the massive sell-off, we had the capitulation volume reversal. Look how high it went. Oh, all the way back to the high of day. What a beauty. Okay, well, anyway, I was just begging for price to come back down into some of these areas, because we can see, look at this structure here. We have aggressive buying, high volume aggressive buying. Look at the delta. So just in this range, we had very high buy delta, kind of a pocket that had accumulated here. And then we had price move pretty aggressively away. So that was creating a bit of a potential demand zone. A lot of buyers factored in that probably wanted to defend this area. So there's my thesis for looking at this region in general that kind of spanned down here to about 15, starting at about 18. So I just kind of marked this midpoint at 45.17 or so. And so here we are. We ended up trading into some liquidity at this point. I'll just speed this up a little bit. And of course, when I'm looking to enter these setups, I just look for signs of aggressive buying out of these areas, large volume like this. But I like to see a really swift move away from this area with aggressive buying to kind of add confirmation to scale in, put risk on. Because of course it can always just blast right through these areas of interest and paint a completely different picture than what the thesis was calling for. So I did see some stalling, a little bit of buying energy down here, but I'm just going to speed this up a little bit. After seeing this trade through 45.16, my hope was that we would end up, and actually let me back up a little bit because that was a nice moment. My goal after seeing this sort of activity is to have price come down and test and immediately reverse off of these levels here. And then at that point, my strategy would be to maybe place a buy limit, so it would, or buy stop, so it would, as price came and moved through that area, I would just get filled. So let's actually back this up again here. I want to go to 1x. Okay. Let's go. Back down. So price is going to come down and test right here. So this is what I'm kind of waiting to see what happens. It'd be easier to view it this way here. And we get this immediate reaction where price actually just pukes out and we get a stop run. And that's not necessarily bad. I'm glad it didn't waffle around and hesitate, because then oftentimes it can be hard to tell what's going to happen and you end up maybe putting risk on. But this gave a nice puke, and then a little bit of book activity, and then a sort of a V-shaped recovery there. So this was nice. I like to see it puke out and then immediately we reclaim this 46.25. So this would be, I think, a valid confirmation to put a little risk on. especially as we get back up above our 17 and 18 levels. That's where we had some other activity over here as well. So we did end up kind of waffling around a little bit. I'm going to fast forward this. Nothing breaching below 15 at this point. So again, stop placement, not too much to worry about there. And then here's another nice move where we get some more aggressive buying. We get a retest of this 17.25 and then a move back up. So this is another nice spot to potentially add and see if we get that move to the upside. And this was nice. So we got ended up getting up to 22. At this point, I did have some orders filled, and I was anticipating holds here at about this 18 level at this point. So I had already protected my position, and we got a swift move back down, and it immediately came right back down and through, and I stopped break even on this particular entry, but I was still committed to this trade. I just didn't want to be in that position if it was going to test lower and not hold this area. So I waited for further development of price to see what happens. And boom, we get hit with this big tape bomb. Normally that's like, for me, that's kind of the kiss of death, depending on what happens moments afterward. If we tape bomb through this liquidity, and at this point we're right at the 15, we're right at that bottom of that range where we had this buy delta built up. So it was hyper important, what happens moments later. Do we get that aggressive push back to the upside or not? If we don't, and we kind of struggle, then I would say this trade is invalidated, thesis invalidated, time to move on. Sorry, a little pause in the video, but we're back. So we did get this nice move back up to 17 here, and then to and through it. So this is a really positive sign because we had the initiation of this bomb was down here at 16.25. So my new thesis was, as long as we can maintain above 16.25 and 15, that and I saw signs of progress to the upside, that I was willing to re-enter this position. So here in a few moments I did end up re-entering, and it was right about here as we start to go boom pop. So that little pop right there with just a bit higher of an aggressive buy, that was when I entered. So right here in this retracement area here, and set my stop down below the bomb and let things go from there. So let's speed this up. And I was looking for at least a hold of this range and a breach, and we got a really lovely break. That's a really nice break, and then it just ended up ripping to the upside. We're going super fast speed here, but I did end up taking off size as we started to approach this area where we had a lot of congestion in this channel here that we formed in this aggressive selling behavior at this point. So up to the 25 range is kind of my initial target there. So that was the third setup. All of them longs, all of them because of this bullish macro perspective, and really happy with the analysis and the trading, and just wanted to share some of the more nuanced order flow observations intraday. So I hope you enjoyed it. Drop a like and subscribe if you do like this, so that I know to continue to make content like this. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night.